this is a massive season for Cade and for the offense and Garrett Riley and Clemson in general, because you want to be able to reverse the narrative about what the program being on a backslide. And um, Dabo is, doesn't have this much, doesn't have much time left. And I saw somebody say that, Dabo is one disappointing season away from being on one more disappointing season away from being on the hot seat. Like, and it's like, obviously these people aren't very well acquainted with Clemson and kind of the goings ons of our athletic department and how things go around here. But you're just, you're going to get those kinds of those kind of comments, and you're going to get those narratives are going to be made, whether they're true or not. So, and it's not a good look. So, Clemson ultimately is going to be the one that has to dispel those narratives. So it's put up or shut up time, I think.
It's 100% put up or shut up time, and I think this year has to be the year. And all the narratives, like you mentioned, Jordan, are out there. The narratives about Dabo Swinney's going to hang it up, and he's let the game pass himself by, and he's burying his head in the sand, and Dabo's just okay with running a program with a good culture that graduates students and makes good fathers and good men and good husbands, and is about the Paul journey and the opportunities outside of football, and the degrees that his guys are getting, and he's okay with if this is what it's got to be, then that's how he's going to run his program. And okay, I get some of that criticism, and I get that people disagree with maybe some of the ways that Dabo Swinney runs his program and how he goes about things. I know people don't like necessarily how he goes about the transfer portal, or how he goes about how they divvy up NIL, or that he doesn't lean into NIL more, and people think he should. But at the end of the day, I don't think these people are serious when they're basically saying, to me, what they're basically saying is Dabo no longer cares if Clemson's competitive. And I don't think that could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
You can't sit there and tell me that Dabo Swinney is not trying to get this program back to where it was when they were winning titles in 2016 and 2018 with the moves that he's made recently. I understand the criticism of some of Dabo's hires after, some coaches left, right? After Robbie Caldwell retired, and after
Jeff Scott went to
Jeff
USF.
Scott left.
Tony Elliott.
Tony Elliott goes to Virginia, right? I understand the criticism of some of his hires after those guys left, right? He brings in, or he promotes Brandon Streeter, right? He gives Thomas Austin a job, and he had only ever coached, lower level college football, and not for that long, right? So brings in Thomas Austin as the offensive line coach, brings in Brandon Streeter. But guess what? Those were very short experiments. It's not like these dudes were coaching for Dabo for 5 and 6 years, and then he threw up his hands like, all right, I guess I'll make a change because everybody's complaining. He fired Brandon Streeter after one season, a former player of his that coached on his staff for years, lives literally next door to the guy, fired him after year one to bring in Garrett Riley. Thomas Austin, another former player of Dabo Swinney, fired after 2 seasons as the offensive line coach. Brings in Matt Luke. Does that sound like a guy that's not trying to be competitive, that's not trying to win? If all he's trying to do is have a good culture and graduate players, and we're gonna do it our way, and if you don't like it, then kind of buzz off type of mentality, then why would he fire those guys? He could have just kept those guys. If Garrett Riley wasn't calling the offense last year, why do you fire Brandon Streeter? If Dabo wanted to call the offense the entire time, why fire Brandon Streeter and bring in Garrett Riley? You think a guy like Garrett Riley is going to come in fresh off a national title against Texas Christian, or at TCU, right? Come in and be like, oh yeah, Dabo, I'll just be your puppet out here. You could call the plays. Come on, man. Like this stuff can't be serious. There's no way people say this stuff and they actually believe what they're saying.
Dabo's calling the plays. I'm like, you can't.
I mean, it's the craziest thing. But people actually believe this stuff. or at least they say it on the internet enough to make me think that they believe it. And it's just like, you don't fire a guy like, if Dabo wanted to call the plays, he'd have just kept Brandon Streeter, because Brandon Streeter would have probably done whatever Dabo Swinney wanted him to do, right? Same thing with Thomas Austin. But instead, he brings in in Garrett Riley, a younger coach, a fresh mind, a guy that has fresh ideas on offense
and no ties to Clemson or Dabo.
No ties to Clemson whatsoever, to revamp the Clemson offense. And then he brings in a guy like Matt Luke that has decades of experience, head coaching experience, multiple high first and second round picks in the NFL draft for offensive linemen, a huge pedigree of just producing these massive, good offensive linemen. He brings that guy in. You don't bring people like that in if you're not trying to be competitive. That's all I'm saying. So the narrative that Clemson or that Dabo is just burying his head in the sand and he doesn't want to be competitive in college football anymore, man, get out of here with that. You may disagree, and I may disagree with some of the stuff that he does and how he goes about certain things, but to say that the guy's not trying to be competitive and not trying to bring Clemson back to where they were in 2016 and 2018, and for those, 10 plus years of, or 12 consecutive seasons of double-digit wins, come on, that's not true. He is trying to do it. And the changes I think that he's made recently make it very clear that he's trying to do that. So it's just some of those narratives out there that I hear constantly in the media, whether it be on social media or, different people talking, it drives me crazy, man. It's maddening sometimes. And I'm not saying Dabo's perfect, and I'm not saying his way's gonna, work. We'll see. I think you put it perfectly, Jordan, that this year is, this kind of put up or shut up time this year, right? Like it's the year to see if we can get this thing going back in the right direction.